Ah, the Maine Coon. I mean, just look at them. They're majestic, right? One of the most popular breeds out there, and for good reason. But what if I told you that most new owners, even with the best intentions, make 5 really critical, and I mean fatal, mistakes? Mistakes that can lead to some serious heartbreak for you and real harm to your cat. Let's get into it.
So you're thinking about getting one, right? Maybe you've seen those incredible photos online, you've heard about their dog-like personality, and you're just thinking, yep, that is the cat for me.
Okay, but pump the brakes for just a second. Before you make that call, we really need to talk. We're about to go through 5, well, let's call them fetal misunderstandings. And I use that word because they can turn that dream cat into a nightmare of chronic pain for them, and honestly, a ton of vet bills and heartbreak for you.
All right, here's the game plan. First, we're going to talk about the genetics gamble you might be taking without even knowing it. Then, we'll bust a really painful myth about their grooming. After that, we'll cover feeding these gentle giants, why their brain is kind of like a dog's, and finally, the risky timeline trap, where getting the timing right is everything. Let's dive in.
Okay, mistake number 1. This is probably the most serious, and it's the one you can't undo. It all happens before you even bring your kitten home. It's the failure to really dig into their genetic health clearances.
So, the #1 genetic boogeyman for this breed is a heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM for short. Basically, it's a silent killer. The walls of the heart get thicker and thicker, which makes it harder and harder to pump blood, until it just can't. And tragically, it's way too common in Maine Coons.
And look, the science on this is it's shocking. There's a specific gene mutation they found. If a cat has 1 copy of this bad gene, their risk for HCM is almost double. Okay, that's bad. But if they have 2 copies, the risk skyrockets by 18 times. We're talking an incredibly high chance of sudden death before they even hit their 4th birthday. It's terrifying.
And right here, this is the trap that so many well-meaning people fall into. A breeder shows them a DNA test that's clear and they think, great, we're in the clear. But no, that is a really dangerous assumption. Why? Because it turns out that DNA test only looks for that one specific gene. Cats can and do get HCM from a whole bunch of other genetic pathways we haven't even identified yet. So that DNA test alone, it is not enough.
So here is your non-negotiable takeaway, the absolute gold standard. A good responsible breeder has to give you a full health file. And for HCM, that means you demand proof of 2 things: the DNA test results and a recent heart ultrasound, that's an echocardiogram, for both parents. If they can't show you both, you thank them for their time and you walk away. Seriously, it's that important.
All right, let's move on to mistake number 2. This one is all about that gorgeous, flowing coat and a myth that causes these cats a whole lot of physical pain. And that's the myth that they are somehow low maintenance.
You know, I think I know where this idea comes from. People hear they're lower maintenance than a Persian, and their brain just hears low maintenance. But that's not the same thing at all. The reality is that thick, shaggy double coat needs to be brushed at least 2 to 3 times a week. And when they're shedding, you're looking at a daily commitment. If you don't, you're heading for trouble.
And when that brushing is neglected, it sets off this cascade of misery. First, the loose undercoat gets trapped and tangles into these dense, tight clumps called mats. I want you to just imagine having a piece of gum stuck in your hair, pulling on your scalp 24/7. That's what it feels like. But it gets worse. Those mats trap moisture and dirt right against the skin, which is a perfect breeding ground for nasty bacteria and yeast infections. It's a guaranteed trip to the vet.
Now, the good news is this is totally preventable, but you need the right gear. A regular little brush isn't going to cut it. It just skims over the top coat. What you absolutely need is a stainless steel comb with long teeth, sometimes called a greyhound comb or a butter comb. It's your #1 tool because it gets all the way down through that dense undercoat to the skin. This isn't optional, it's essential.
Okay, on to mistake number 3. And this one's all about what goes in their food bowl. It comes from a huge misunderstanding about how these cats grow up. See, they do it in glorious slow motion.
I mean, check out this growth curve. Your average domestic cat, they're pretty much an adult at 1 year. A Maine Coon at 1 year old is basically an awkward teenager. They're still growing, still filling out. They don't hit full physical maturity until they are 4, sometimes even 5 years old. That's a huge difference.
And that massive difference creates what I call the fatal nutritional gap. You know how almost every bag of cat food says to switch to the adult formula at 12 months? Well, if you do that for a Maine Coon, you're essentially putting a growing teenager on a diet meant for a settled adult. You're robbing them of the high-protein, high-calorie fuel they desperately need to build that big frame and strong bones.
But there's a flip side to this coin that's just as bad. People see this huge cat and think they need a bottomless food bowl. This leads to obesity, which can be really hard to spot under all that fur. And remember those genetic time bombs we talked about? The heart issues, the hip dysplasia? Well, being overweight is like an accelerant. It just makes those problems so much worse, so much faster.
All right, mistake number 4. This one isn't about their body, it's about their mind. And it's a big one. It's treating this incredibly smart, social cat like you would a typical, independent, aloof cat.
You always hear Maine Coons described as dog-like, and it's not just because of their size, it's the personality. They are super people-oriented. They will follow you around the house, they want to be involved, they crave that interaction. So what does that mean? It means leaving them alone for 8-10 hours a day while you're at work? That's not going to fly. That can lead to genuine distress and full-blown separation anxiety.
So for a cat this smart, a boring environment is basically a cage. They need enrichment. And I don't mean just a few fuzzy mice. I mean a huge, sturdy cat tree. One that a 20-pound cat can leap onto without it tipping over. I mean puzzle feeders that make them use their brain to get their food. And this is critical. It means you have to commit to at least 30 minutes of real, interactive playtime every single day. They need to hunt that wand toy, to chase that laser dot, to burn off that dog-like energy. And that brings us to our 5th and final mistake. This one is about getting caught in the middle of a really confusing, sometimes heated debate about when to spay or neuter your cat.
See, as a new owner, you're going to hear 2 totally conflicting pieces of advice. Camp number 1 will tell you to wait, maybe until they're a year old or even later. They're usually worried about joint development, an idea borrowed from big dogs. Then you've got camp number 2, who will tell you to get it done much earlier, like around 5 or 6 months, to prevent some really catastrophic behavioral problems from ever starting.
So who's right? Well, let me be crystal clear about the risk of waiting too long. It's one word: spraying. Once a male cat hits puberty and starts spraying urine to mark his territory, that behavior can become permanent. It gets hardwired. Even if you neuter him later, he might never stop. It's a behavior that destroys furniture, destroys relationships, and is one of the top reasons cats get surrendered to shelters. It's a bond breaker.
This is why the expert consensus points to a sweet spot. The optimal window is right around 6 to 8 months of age. This is the perfect balance. They're old enough and big enough for the procedure to be safe, but it's just before those hormones kick in and that awful spraying behavior has a chance to start. It's the best of both worlds.
So when you step back and look at all 5 of these mistakes, from the genetics and grooming to the food, the mental stimulation, and the timing of their surgery, they all point to one single core error: thinking that a Maine Coon is just a regular house cat, but bigger. And they're not. They are a specialized, high-needs breed. They need a 5-star owner who's willing to do the research and put in the work. So the final question isn't about them, it's about you. Are you ready to be that 5-star owner?